Welcome back to the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. I'm Joe Noga, joined by Paul Hoynes. Hoynes in New York, getting ready for the Guardians to take on the Mets tonight. But let's go back and talk about the weekend series. Cleveland takes 2 out of 3 against the Twins, winning in extra innings on Friday night, hanging on by a run on Saturday, and then comeback was a little bit short on Sunday, losing that game 5-4. Hoynes, they play the Twins pretty close historically when they're playing at Progressive Field, and it usually comes out with a win for Cleveland, but Sunday wasn't the case. Joey Cantillo gives up 4 runs in the first inning, but then had a really good outing after that.
Yeah, such a weird game, Joe. What, 6 runs scored in the first inning, and then neither team scores at all until, later in the game. I thought Cantillo, you're right. I thought Cantillo pitched well after that first inning. I was glad to see Vogt stay with him, give him that chance to work out of that jam. And, he got better as the game went along. But like you said, it's been a nightmare for the Twins, especially in late games, late innings, and the Guardians almost did it again to them. What, Rocchio with the 2-run single in the ninth inning brings them within 1 run, and you've got Jose and Schneemann, who has been red hot. They're batting with the game on the line. They just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, it sort of felt all signs were pointing to another Guardians walk-off win against the Twins at Progressive Field. Didn't come to pass, but you like your chances with Jose Ramirez at the plate in the ninth inning. I'm looking at the stats here. The Guardians are 16-7 in their last 23 games since July 7th. Second best winning percentage in the American League. But to your point about playing the Twins there, it was something like 14 straight wins that they had had against Minnesota at Progressive Field in games decided by 2 runs or fewer. I sort of take a walk over by the Minnesota beat writers, our friend Dan Hayes over there, and after Saturday's game, he looked so defeated and so downtrodden about his team had traded away 38% of their roster at the trading deadline, and 2 more 1-run losses for the Twins in the first 2 games. So we sent Dan out of town at least on a high note as the Twins head to Detroit. But good for them. Cantillo, 9 strikeouts, a career high in that outing. Just he continues to sort of show why he was in the bullpen to start the season, sent down to Columbus to sort of get stretched out, and then almost by necessity because of the Luis Ortiz situation, he returned, and since then in early July he's been pretty good.
Yeah, the great curveball and changeup, Joe. Those are 2 really devastating pitches for him. And I was just watching the game on TV. I didn't cover it. You obviously were there. But the Twins hitters had no chance against that changeup. They couldn't time it up. I mean, the curveball I think got hit a little bit, but so if he pairs that with his fastball's not great, but if he locates it well, he's a legitimate middle of the rotation starter, maybe better.
Yeah, Stephen Vogt said that the Twins hitters had a good game plan early. They sort of ambushed him, and you could see three consecutive singles and the Royce Lewis double early. But again, you're talking about Joey Cantillo's stuff. I would put his secondary pitches up there with anybody on the staff in the starting rotation. As good as Gavin Williams has been this year since adding a cutter to his mix, Joey Cantillo's stuff is he's got filthy breaking pitches, and I would go put him right up there with anybody on the roster in terms of what they're able to throw at any one time. We did see the bullpen really step forward. Hoynes, it was a hell of a week for this bullpen. They started off getting punched in the teeth on Monday of last week with the Emmanuel Clase news, and then all these the idea of all these questions: who's going to step forward as the closer, who's Stephen Vogt going to use in whatever situation. We sort of got an idea of which way he's going to lean on Friday with that extra innings game. He went to Cade Smith in the 9th and 10th inning, and really Cade Smith seems to be the kind of guy who's most suited for an extra innings game, especially at home when you've got that automatic runner on second base. And a strikeout in the first at bat of a 10th inning is something you need to sort of set yourself up.
Yeah, Joe, that was really impressive. He faced six guys, tired six guys. The automatic runner doesn't advance. Joe, I mean, when was the last time you saw that? It's really rare to see, a team with the automatic runner in the top of the 10th inning not get that runner home and or not even let him advance. I don't know if perhaps he did advance, but
He made it. He made it to third on a fly ball, but the inning ended on a ground ball there. The thing about Cade Smith in that situation is it helps when the runner at second base is Christian Vasquez,
yeah.
their catcher who's not exactly the fastest guy in the world. But Stephen Vogt said Cade Smith is quick to the plate and he can get a strikeout at any time. It makes him the ideal pitcher in that situation.
And then it makes it really, you're able to on the offensive end, you're really able to be conservative and play for one run, and that's exactly what they did. With the automatic runner, Rocchio on second, Quan gets a bunt single down. David Fry strikes out. They intentionally walk Ramirez, which everyone knew was coming, and then Manzardo gets the big hit. So you're only playing for one run there. You're not in a 2 run or 3 run hole. So if you hold them scoreless in the top of the 10th inning, the home team really has an advantage.
Yeah, the win probability swings definitely in Cleveland's favor in that situation. The bullpen again stepped forward on Saturday night or Saturday afternoon. Tanner Bybee, not exactly the sharpest outing for him, gets into the fifth inning, but sort of fizzles out there. And the bullpen comes in and really gives them 4 2/3 innings scoreless, and gives them a chance to come back and win the game.
Every day Matt Festa is in there relieving Bybee. Then you go to Sabrowski, who was excellent. What,
Mm-hmm.
six up, six down, maybe? Then, Enright, who's really been kind of a revelation, Joe. He's kind of been a nice surprise in that bullpen. And then Gaddis comes in the ninth inning. I was thought for sure he had a save before, but his first big league save.
Yeah, and you could tell the moment that he got the swing and miss and the strikeout for his first big league save. Hunter Gaddis, who's had an up and down season, he's been really good at times. He's been kind of shaky at times. You could tell that it looked like there was a weight lifted off his shoulder. He put his hands on both knees and sort of screamed. And I asked him after the game, did it feel like that after the week that the bullpen has been through, and just the emotional roller coaster with the Clase situation, what it meant for him to do that. And in typical Hunter Gaddis fashion, his answer was short. It was more of a quip than it was an answer. And he just said, "Nope, just got to go out there and do it," and that's what he did. That's the kind of wash it and move on to the next one sort of approach that a good reliever needs to have. And it was kind of not much to write about on that, but good to hear Hunter Gaddis have that approach.
Especially gives up the leadoff double,
Hmm.
to start the ninth inning, and he was coming off of the appearance the night before where he made that terrible error, the 2 run error that really put them in a hole. So to come all the way back there, gives up the leadoff, the double, and then strikes the Twins out in order. Big inning for him, big confidence boost, and now. Vote can go a couple different ways in that closer role.
Yeah, and we're talking about what the Guardians are going to do, especially at the back end of that bullpen. But how's that bullpen going to respond now, moving forward, knowing that at least until the end of this month, they're not going to have their most dominant and most reliable weapon over the last 4 years, and probably longer than that, and maybe never getting that back again. And somebody's going to have to assert himself in some way. Just where does this bullpen go from here?
I think we're seeing it, Joe. They're cycling through different guys. They bring Carlos Hernandez on the scene. Trevor Stephan is getting closer, so I think they're going to keep rotating guys through the pen. But and Heron gets sent down, so you've got him down at AAA, hopefully working on his command and throwing strikes. So you've got a lot of bodies, and that's the key. And I think the two key guys obviously are Gavin. I mean, yeah, Gaddis and Cade Smith. But I like the way Sobrowski's kind of coming on too. So you've got some late inning options there. It's just going to be a flip of the coin depending on how the matchups go.
Yeah, Sobrowski's been impressive, but what always makes me nervous, every time he pitches, I worry that he's, one pitch away from an elbow injury again or a recurrence. It's a guy who's had multiple Tommy John surgeries, and he started this season off with, on the injured list out of spring training with an injection in his elbow again. But when he's on and when he's right, he's a weapon from that left side, and we saw it in the postseason last year. We saw it late in the year last year when he made his debut. And, when he's given the opportunity and when he's healthy, he's been really effective.
And Joe, his ball must really move, late because I was watching him on TV and he was throwing it right down the middle against the Twins and they could not hit it. I mean, so
Yeah.
there must be some really late action on that you can only see if you're in the box because, I mean, he was just blowing it by these guys at 96, 97 miles an hour. Good fastball, but not, an outrageous fastball for this day and age. But he, his command, he was aggressive. He wasn't messing around.
He goes right after guys, and that's what Stephen Vogt likes to see. He's 3 games out in the wild card, trailing Seattle and Texas. 8 games out in the division. The Tigers, who have been going through some rough times lately, but again, they had built themselves enough of a lead where they can afford to, maybe work some things out. 8 games up there. They're in town to take on the Mets now in New York. The NL East leading Mets, who fortified their bullpen during the trade deadline. So they had Edwin Diaz, an all-star, at the back end there. And now they add Taylor Rogers and some other arms. I believe Gregory Soto as well.
Ryan
And
Helsley from St.
and
Louis.
and Ryan Helsley, who anytime you were talking about Emmanuel Clase in the American League over the last several years, Ryan Helsley was sort of the National League counterpart to whatever Clase was able to do. Helsley was able to match in the National League. So yeah, it's not going to be an easy series this weekend in Flushing.
No, definitely. They're loaded offensively, pitching wise. Manaya's coming back off the IL. He's going tonight. Clay Holmes, who we saw a lot of last year from the Yankees. He's in that road. He signed with the Mets as a free agent. Is having a nice year as in their rotation. So, and they're loaded offensively, Joe. Listen to these numbers. Juan Soto, 247, 25 home runs, 63 RBIs. Pete Alonso, 24 home runs, 86 RBIs. And Francisco Lindor, 251, 21 home runs, 64 RBIs. So those guys are all going to be, they're going to be at the top of that lineup, and that's a day's work to get through those guys without getting, knocked around.
Yeah, I think they're one of only like 4 clubs in all of baseball that have 3 guys with 20 home runs or more on the roster. So yeah, it's not murderer's row, but it's definitely up there and it's tough. You mentioned Francisco Lindor, and we've been through the Francisco Lindor coming back to Cleveland, and the Guardians have been out there to play him ever since he was traded away and signed a long-term deal with the Mets. The thing that we're sort of in that sort of time frame or range now where with all the great things that Jose Ramirez has been doing, and gosh, we haven't even mentioned the fact that Ramirez home runs in back-to-back days, and he's on just an incredible heater right now. Over the last his slugging percentage over his last 2 weeks or so has been just off the charts for Ramirez. You look at what Jose's been able to accomplish and how he's climbed the franchise ranks over the last 2 or 3 years. And the question that I keep asking myself is, if Francisco Lindor had stayed, if he had signed a long-term deal with Cleveland and stuck around, and you had the left side of your infield was Francisco Lindor and Jose Ramirez sort of intact for a long stretch there, could Cleveland have won a championship since that 2021 trade?
Joe, I think they would have come close. 2000, they haven't been to the series since 2016, right? We saw, and they were both on that team. They went to 7 games against the Cubs. So, we saw what they're capable of doing. They've gotten, and both of them have improved. They're better now. I mean, and the thing we were talking about before the podcast, they pushed each other. There was that internal rivalry. They were friends, but they pushed each other hard. And, Jose was always kind of in Lindor's shadow. He's always like, his feet were going double fast. Like when you see the duck on the surface of a pond, but his feet are going a million miles an hour. He's always trying to keep up with Lindor. But what a combination, Joe. Those are guys you draft Lindor, you sign Ramirez. Those are your guys. You
Mhm.
signed them, you developed them, you brought them to the big leagues together. They flourished, and it was just a shame that Francisco left, and you can't blame him. The Mets gave him what he wanted, but to for those two to come up together and perhaps that's a dream to think they'd stay together their whole careers. It just doesn't happen anymore. But what a combination! And yeah, I think Joe, there might have been a World Series banner flying over Progressive Field if those two had been able to stay together.
Yeah, Lindor sort of went through it his first couple of seasons with the Mets, and once he got his feet under him, you saw last year runner-up MVP in the National League. To obviously to Shohei Ohtani. You take Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge out of the equation, and last year, at some point, Francisco Lindor and Jose Ramirez might have one or more MVP awards under their belts in their respective leagues right now. So yeah, just talk about the talent that the Guardians were able to identify, draft, sign, develop, and bring to the major leagues. It's no coincidence that these guys are two of the best in baseball, and hopefully we get to see some of that personality out there on the field. We know both of them have big personalities, but maybe if Lindor winds up at third base, we see a little bit of an interaction at some point over the next 3 days. Hoynesy, the Major League Baseball, we talked about their initiatives to sort of bring the game to a bigger audience and have game and stage games in new venues and new ballparks, and that's why you saw the Field of Dreams game. You saw you see the Little League World Series game in Williamsport. The Speedway Classic took place over the weekend, and when I say it took place over the weekend, it took place over multiple days of the weekend, because the one thing that Major League Baseball couldn't account for was the weather. Big storm over Bristol, Tennessee on Saturday night. I felt bad for the fans. Reportedly 92,000 fans in the stands at the Bristol Motor Speedway during the hours leading up to, and then the delay before they got started. They finally did start the game, but it seemed like it rained harder once the game got started. There was standing water and that sort of glassy look on the infield, which you never want to see. What'd you think, just from the 1,000 mile away perspective, of what happened with the game that had to be suspended and picked up on Sunday morning?
Yeah, Mother Nature, Joe, you can't beat her. And it can the plans of mice and men. What do they say? Nothing.
Best laid plans of mice and men
Yeah.
often go astray.
So, nothing. If weather gets involved, you're kind of helpless if you're playing in an outside facility, and that was like a, kind of a created facility, obviously. Great idea, great execution, but the bad weather did not help them.
No, Atlanta winds up winning the suspended portion of the game, 4-2. But they did manage to fill some of the time. They had segments where they stuffed Big Poppy in a NASCAR car and took him around the track. I mean, the guy's enormous, and you got him just like basically sardine canned into a NASCAR car, and then he's running around the track. That was amusing. I think it's pretty cool.
How fast was he going, Joe?
They had him up to a couple 100 miles an hour or more. That's probably yeah, it's frightening. The one thing that they didn't account for was the size of the crowd. The 92,000 fans it set the record, Major League Baseball's attendance record, previously held by Cleveland at Old Municipal Stadium. Better than 84,000 fans back in 1954 caught part of an Indians versus Yankees doubleheader at the old stadium. So Cleveland gets knocked down a peg in the all-time attendance for a single game to see a major league game. but they didn't account for the hot dog factor. The fans at Bristol Speedway eat a lot of hot dogs. They ran out of buns. They also ran out of nacho cheese. According to reports through social media, and I feel bad for the fans who had to sit there, no buns on their hot dogs, no cheese on their nachos, in the pouring rain for 5 hours, only to be told by Major League Baseball that they've got to turn around and come back tomorrow. Kind of the less than ideal situation for Rob Manfred and the rest of Major League Baseball.
That would have never happened in Cleveland, Joe. The Dollar Dog Night, these guys are prepared at Progressive Field. They probably got buns all over the place, man.
Well, and it never rains in Cleveland, so obviously, not going to happen. All right, Hoynesy, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Cleveland Baseball Talk podcast. We'll hear back from you tomorrow after the first game of this series against the Mets, and we'll see what the Guardians can do.
Good deal, Joe.